Hey guys, James here. In this video, we are going to learn how to manage a domain name in our Google Domains account. If you didn't already know, Google is a domain registrar, which means that you can purchase and manage domain names from Google. So we're going to take a brief look at how to connect a domain name to a website, also how to set up G Suite so that you can use G Suite for your email, so you can have a professional email address. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first thing we do, of course, is log into Google Domains. So we can go to domains.google.com, log in with our Gmail account. And as you can see, I have a domain name buying problem. I have way too many domain names. So this is what you see once you log into Google Domains. It's pretty simple. It's one of the things I like about Google Domains versus some of the other places you can buy domain names, is that Google tries to keep it pretty simple here. So you can see sort of important things at the top. I have a domain name that's going to expire soon, and it wants to know if I want to renew it or turn on auto renew. You definitely want auto renew on for any domain that's important to you. Domains are cheap. Most of them are around $12 a year. So worst case scenario is a domain name renews for $12 that you didn't want to renew. Big deal. It's a really big hassle if a domain name expires that you actually want, especially if somebody else snags it up before you can repurchase it. That's a bad deal. So just turn auto renew on for any domains that are important to you. Here's a domain I'm not really using. It's just sort of forwarding to another domain. So we're going to use this as our example to kind of look around at some of our options. So you can click on the domain name itself, or you can come over here and click on manage. And then we'll see some pretty typical options over here. Now, I spend most of my time in DNS. I don't really mess with these other things, but we're going to take a brief look at them. So registration settings, this is important to have the correct information in here. For the registrant, admin, and tech, sometimes these are all the same. Sometimes they're not. It just depends on how a particular organization is structured, but it's important that this information is correct and up to date. This information won't be public to people if you choose privacy when you purchase a domain name. And that's another thing I like about Google Domains, is they don't charge for privacy, and it's really easy to set up. It's literally just a checkbox. If you want privacy when you're purchasing the domain, click the checkbox to turn privacy on, and you can always change that later as well. DNS, we're going to come back to that because that's where we're going to spend most of our time. Website, this is what you could use to connect your domain name to various website providers. If we click on build website up here, you'll see that we can do an online store, blog, WordPress, or something else. And there's even more options. We can connect to Blogger, Shopify, Weebly, Squarespace, Wix, Bluehost. There's lots of different options here for connecting to various types of hosting. For myself, I host all my websites on a virtual private server that I get through InMotion Hosting. So I actually don't mess with this portion. I mess with the DNS section, which we're going to look at here in a minute. But this is a nice, quick, easy way to quickly connect your domain name to something like Blogger if you're just trying to get a simple blog going. And then email is another thing that I don't use very often. You would come here to actually create a new G Suite email address account, or you could just set up a simple email forward. Setting up an email forward doesn't cost any money, but you have the disadvantage of you can't reply to somebody from the email forward. It really is only a forward. It forwards any emails that get sent to it to a different mailbox. So it's an inexpensive way to sort of have a professional looking email address, like something at yourdomain.com, but you won't be able to reply to emails from that. You'll be replying to the emails from whatever email address you're forwarding to. So probably like a free Gmail account. If you want that ability to actually be able to reply from the something at yourdomain.com, then you'll actually need to set up a real G Suite user. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to assume that you already have a G Suite account and that you've already added your domain name to that account, verified your domain name, I should say, and then purchased a user. It's $5 or $6 a month per email address. And then once you do all that in your G Suite account, it's going to tell you, okay, now that you've done all this, it's time to go set up your MX records in your domain name settings. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to leave this the same. We're going to leave this the same. And right here, synthetic records is how we're going to connect G Suite. It's pretty simple. We're going to select this drop down, choose G Suite, and we're going to click add. What this does is it automatically adds what's called MX records, mail exchange records. Typically you have to do it. Okay, I got an error because I didn't actually set up G Suite for this domain name. If you set up G Suite for your domain name, you won't see this error. Typically you would have to go down here to the custom resource records, and for G Suite there's 5 different MX records that you have to add, and so you'd have to add them each one at a time, and it would be kind of a hassle. But in Google domain names, if you just use the synthetic records option, choose G Suite and click add, that's it. It'll take care of adding those MX records. Now you will still need to wait a little bit. Your email likely won't start working right away. You may be able to receive email but not be able to send it quite yet. It takes a little bit of time for these DNS settings to propagate. So, but honestly, it usually doesn't take more than an hour, but any domain registrar, if you ask them, will tell you that it could take up to 24 or even 48 hours for settings to fully propagate. But usually if it takes that long, something didn't get done right. So setting up G Suite is really simple. If you're not using G Suite and you're using some other sort of email provider, then you will have to come down here to the bottom, choose MX record, and add whatever information your mail provider tells you to enter here. For instance, if you're using Office 365 for email, they have their own set of MX records that you'll have to put in here. Every email provider will have their own specific set of MX records, and they'll tell you what they are, and you'll just come in here and add those in. Some have 1 or 2 MX records, some have more. Like I said, Google has 5 different MX records, but they're all different, but it's all basically the same process. The other thing I do in here a lot is a record. This is basically just telling Google where this domain name should be pointed. So if you're not using one of these options over here under website, you're hosting it like me, you're hosting it yourself, you have your own hosting account somewhere, and you just want to point your domain towards that hosting, this is how you do it. Typically, your hosting provider will tell you an IP address, and they want you to type that in here, 172. I don't know, I'm making this up, 91.08. Whatever. They'll give you some IP address you need to plug in here and create an A record for. Some of them are a little bit different. For instance, I think if you use Wix, they want you to also add a CNAME. But for them, they'll tell you what you need to do, and this is where you'll come to do it. They'll tell you if you need to add an A record. They'll tell you if you need to add a CNAME. They should tell you exactly what you need to add, and you can come in here and add it there. For me, I add my IP address as an A record. As you can actually see, I've already done that. I have an A record, and this is the IP address where my server lives. And then I usually also set up a CNAME, www, and you can type in the same IP address again, or you can just type @, which basically says this means if they type www before the domain name, it'll just basically forward it to the same place the regular domain name goes. So if you've ever been to a website and you type in website.com and it works, but then you type in www.website.com and for some reason it doesn't work, probably because they didn't set up a CNAME correctly. But anyhow, that's really, I guess one other thing you might do in here is when you are setting up a domain name in something like Google Analytics maybe, or in G Suite, when you're setting up your G Suite account for the first time, it's going to ask you to verify that you own the domain name that you say you own. And one of the ways that they will have you do that is by adding a TXT record, and that's done in the same exact area. You'll click this drop down and choose TXT. I can't see it because this thing's in the way. Let me move this out of my way. There it is, very last one, TXT. They'll give you some big long thing to type in here. You just copy and paste the big long code and hit add, and then you go back to G Suite or whatever you're trying to convince that you own a domain name, and you'll say, okay, I added the TXT record, go check it. And usually within 10 or 15 minutes, it will recognize the change that you just made, and that will prove to them that you actually do own this domain, because nobody else could come in here and do this unless they own the domain name. So those are probably the three most common DNS changes I would say people make. They need to tell the domain where the website's being hosted. They need to tell the domain name who's hosting the email. And sometimes you need to prove to someone that you own a domain. And so you'll have to add the TXT record. Now there are other, as you can see, many other records in here that most of the time you'll never mess around with these. I know with Office 365, sometimes there's extra things in here that you'll have to mess with. But again, they are usually pretty good about telling you exactly what you need to do. And Google has made their DNS settings manager here very simple and straightforward. So it shouldn't be too hard for you to follow the instructions from your email provider or your web host and be able to come in here to your Google Domains account and do whatever it is that they need you to do to get that working. So I highly recommend Google Domains for domain names. Their prices are, I mean, all domain registrars are basically the same price. A lot of times they might run a deal where you get a domain name for like $1 the first year or something. But after that, for the most part, domain names are all typically around $8 to $12 a year. Google provides privacy for free, which is really great. And Google also doesn't try to sell you a bunch of stuff. Some of these other domain registrars, every time you click the next screen, it's trying to sell you 6 more things that you don't need. So I really like that Google Domains is simple, prices are competitive, and privacy is free and easy to set up. So I hope you found this video useful, and let me know in the comments if you have any further questions about Google Domains. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Bye. Have a great time.